Well, hello again, not this time from St James's Park, but here in my hotel room at Ramside Hall at Durham. Yeah, it's the football writers' dinner here tonight, and I've had to dash straight down the A1 from the game to get here in time. So my reflections come with a little bit of a different backdrop, not the Milburn stand this time. I've just been downstairs actually now talking to Eddie Howe and Dan Byrne, and credit to them for making the dinner here tonight, because that would have been very easy to pull out on what was a pretty bruising afternoon, literally and metaphorically, and one for me that could have lasting damage and an impact on Newcastle's season going forward, not just on that Carabao Cup final, but beyond that as well, in terms of the quest to get back into the Champions League. Anthony Gordon, well, he's going to be missing for the next month it is, before he can play again for Newcastle after that sending off today. And that's really the only place to start. It's the only thing my taxi driver down here wanted to talk to me about. It's the only thing we've been talking about in the pre-reception drinks there. Eddie Howe, I understand this. You know, he came out afterwards and spoke to us, and he had to quite tactfully defend the player. He couldn't, we were sat there waiting for our back pages, Howe slamming the action and condemning what a important player had done, really. He didn't. He said he hadn't seen the incident. I understand why he did that. And he said the club might appeal. Well, I can tell you now, if the club do appeal, they haven't got a hope in hell's chance of being successful. It was a red card. Absolutely, it was a red card. And what I really don't understand is, and for so long now, we've been speaking about everything being framed in the context of the final, that it was obvious that first league game back after they beat Arsenal in the semi-final down at Manchester City, the players had one eye on Wembley against Liverpool in 2 weeks' time. They weren't following through with those actions, those challenges. Eddie Howe admitted as much himself. So to that end, quite why Anthony Gordon did what he did today, if he'd pulled out of a challenge, I would have understood it to a degree. But to commit to pushing somebody in the face the way he did is just absolute lunacy. I really don't get it. Does it speak to a wider frustration that he may have behind the scenes? And I've spoken of this before. I mentioned I did that True Faith event a couple of weeks ago, and some guys in the crowd might not have liked, as honest as I was, just outlining the situation and the landscape at the club with some of those very top players, yes, being a little bit frustrated by the absence of any signings in 3 windows now. No new training ground, no stadium, Amanda Staveley and Mehrdad Gudussi go, no Champions League football this season. All of that has just created what Eddie Howe described as an unsettled dressing room. So I might be looking too deep into this, and I might just have to put this down to a moment of madness from Anthony Gordon, but does all of that subconsciously, does that contribute to what he does? I don't know. Only Anthony Gordon can answer that, because it really is. It just defines a moment of madness when the cost is not only, I know Tariq Lamptey was sent off 7 or 8 minutes later, when not only is the cost your team going through in an FA Cup for which they are second favourites, it also, then I've already mentioned, it robs a star player from 2 massively important games when we're talking about Newcastle potentially getting back into the Champions League, but also as well, it takes him out of a cup final he would have been absolutely desperate to play in. And if Newcastle are to beat Liverpool, they need Anthony Gordon down that left-hand side, not only because the damage he can do in one direction, but Mo Salah plays down Liverpool's right as well. And in one afternoon now, given the news on Lewis Hall and his injury doesn't seem to be good, Newcastle have potentially lost that left-hand pairing, that England left-hand pairing that were going to be tasked with keeping Mo Salah quiet, and then in the opposite direction, helping Newcastle somehow try and win the game by scoring a goal. All of that just seems to have been blown apart now, and I just think there's no defence for Anthony Gordon. I really don't. Listen, the caveat and the asterisk of all of this is that Anthony Gordon put Newcastle in that final, scored in both legs against Arsenal. I think his form in the league hasn't been at that level necessarily, but as a player who turns up every week, he's there every week, he was outstanding last season. He was incredible last season. It's why he won elevation to the England squad. It's why he was my player of the year last season. It's why I spoke and speak so warmly and fondly of him. I sat down and interviewed him last year. He's one of the most erudite, engaging footballers there is. I've got all the time in the world for him, but his performances recently, week on week, they've been there in the big games. He's been the occasion player, the moments player, absolutely. But has that level been there the way it was last season? No, it hasn't. I'm being honest there. And today, to do what he did, I just can't apply any logic to it whatsoever. And that's why I say there's no defence. And yes, Eddie Howe came out afterwards and was fairly diplomatic in terms of his comments, but I thought it spoke volumes when Eddie Howe didn't speak to Gordon as he made his way off there, right down in front of us in the press box there. And there was no attempt to engage with the player, no offer, of consolation or a chance to gain an explanation. I think Eddie probably knew from what he'd been told and what he's seen with his own eyes in that moment that there was the straight arm, the shove in the face of Jean-Paul Van Heck. And I keep on coming back to the point, I don't get it, I don't understand it. Now, would Newcastle have won without that? Maybe, maybe not. That second half was absolutely bonkers. It was maddening. It was like everyone's mum had shouted, "Tea's ready," and it was next goal wins. It was going from one end to the other without any control, any quality from either side. I thought Newcastle, they gave everything. There was no question of commitment and endeavour there today, but when it actually come down to it, the basic principles of football, pass, control, head, shoot, all the rest of it, was that there? Well, no, it wasn't. And if they could have applied that, they probably would have won, because Brighton were equally guilty of that. And the ultimately the winner, the winning goal, the only real true moment of quality in the game is Danny Welbeck 6 minutes from time when he goes through and dinks Martin Dubravka. And I just thought from the moment of Brighton's equaliser there, right on the stroke of half time, I felt they were the more likely winners, because Newcastle, while they did play with a lot of territory in that second half, there was no control, there was no real cohesion to what they did. Again, it was all a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Joe Willock had the chance where it comes across the box and he misses the header. Yes, Fabian Schär scores what we all think is the winner in the 92nd minute, but it's offside, and it was offside. You've got to accept that. But Brighton, in part because of the nature that they're playing on the break, but also as well, this Newcastle defence right now, it's just coughing up chances routinely. They don't look ever like, really, for me, keeping a clean sheet. You haven't got that confidence in them at all. There's a real lack of pace there at the back. And let's just look at Brighton's goal. Now, I know there was a little bit of angst amongst supporters, and at half-time, one fan made his way into the press box and remonstrated with the officials as they walked off, because Brighton had taken the throw 15 yards further forward than where it should be. They still took it 15 yards inside their own half. I'm sorry, you've got to defend that better. Now, if it's 40, 50 yards further forward and they're taking a throw in from the edge of Newcastle's box, okay, there's cause for complaint, but in that moment, for me, just defend it better. Newcastle were really soft in defending that goal. From the moment the ball bounces, they're not hard enough in the challenge. Anthony Gordon then doesn't track the run of Minty, and he's away, he's through on goal. And I know I was laughing afterwards, he gave that, he's not even a former Newcastle player really, given that was the first time he played at St James's. He still then offered what seemed like, thanks to the Gallagher end, maybe he was thanking them, I don't know, for all the room there was in behind to run clear, and that lack of pace and that need again for Sven Botman to come back, that is just all the more apparent. And doesn't it just feel now the continued absence of Botman, the news on Lewis Hall, the ankle injury he's picked up, going to see a specialist. Eddie Howe's just said to us, no time frame on when he's going to be back. Alexander Isak limping off, having to come off. Now, while Eddie said he doesn't think that's injury related, it's still got to be a concern when you look ahead to the cup final. And I don't want to sound negative, I'm just trying to be realistic. And I said this ahead of the last cup final when Nick Pope was sent off a week before against Liverpool. But it just feels to me as if Newcastle might have lost two cup ties there today. Not just the game against Brighton, but also the one in a fortnight's time against Liverpool. And for the whole feel around the season now, if you are trying to grasp it, positives, we said 3-4 years ago that the FA Cup defeat by Cambridge might have been a good defeat with hindsight, looking back on it. But that relies now on Newcastle winning the Carabao Cup final and making the Champions League. And they are two pretty big ifs, the way things are going right now. It really does feel as if negative momentum rather than positive is building. And after Manchester City, I thought it screamed out. I really did that was that distraction of the cup final. And there's that reason it exists for a reason. It's understandable. I've just said to Eddie downstairs there, for Liverpool, they'll just bounce through. They'll get to the week of the Carabao Cup. Okay, what's next? Oh, we've got a game on Sunday. It's down at Wembley. For Newcastle, it's different when there is 70 years without that domestic trophy. Everything, journalists, players, Guys who own shops put displays in windows, supporters, families, everything is about tickets, trains, planes, automobiles, where are you going the night before the final, how are you getting back if there's going to be a victory parade on the Monday. Everything is geared towards that. It's understandable, and that is a byproduct of Eddie Howe and the players walking into a club and inheriting that history. And it's going to be the same until they do win a trophy, but it's a negative, it's an unfortunate distraction, and it derailed last time. And for me, it's derailing this time, and it risks the whole thing going off track with regards not just the cup final, but the rest of the season as well. And I expressed concern and worry for a while now since that game down at Manchester City. Now, I know it's not what some want to hear, but the immediacy of the cup final, coupled with everything else, all those reasons I've already outlined with regards to the no signings and everything else that might just be bubbling away there in the background, that absence of that communication with the hierarchy, that little vacuum there is there now, guys. Trust me on this. There are players who are unsettled, and I'll defend Eddie and the players. They're a good bunch. They're a brilliant bunch. There's a lot of potential there, but there's a lot of things have to be put right and have to be better at this football club before periods like this can be put to bed, and they can just be winners who go out there and act like a Liverpool or a Manchester City of old. Right now, they're not. And that's why you get games like today where players lose their head, where the team, I was going to say, lose their shape and control. I don't think they ever really had it. They got that lead through Alexander Isak, the penalty in the first half, and they had one or two little moments, but I didn't think they ever really carved anything brilliant by way of openings. You know, they look at the midfield. Tonali's form has levelled out a little bit. Louis Miley was very quiet. Joe Linton looked like someone who needed minutes, understandable. The defence was shaky and coughed up as much chances as Brighton actually made themselves. Gordon did okay, started really well, faded, and then just lost his head. Harvey Barnes on the other wing looked like he needed minutes. He's now going to play in the final, but he needs to build form and fitness and confidence somehow over the course of the next 90 minutes against West Ham. That's all he's got really. Alexander Isak, is he playing with a little bit of an issue in his head given the injury? So I've just gone through all of it there, and it's just a really unfortunate situation in what they find themselves. And I'll wrap up by giving merit stars. I didn't really feel like a merit stars sort of day, but I think I'll give one to Dan Burn, because he had a little bit of a rough first half, and he's downstairs, a nice guy who's just spoken to us. Not just that, but I thought in extra time especially, he put his body on the line. He was limping, he was hurt, and then he put himself in a position whereby Newcastle could get to within 6 minutes of penalty. So 1 star for Dan Burn, 2 stars for Martin Dubravka. And I won that. Martin Dubravka came back in the day, and I think that is Eddie Howe has made his mind up. He wants Dubravka in for the final. We thought it was the other way around when he put Pope in a couple of weeks ago, but Nick Pope has shown himself to probably not be there really in terms of what you'd want going up against Liverpool. So it's a brave call. It's a bold call by Eddie Howe for today. But I think that is with the intent of Dubravka playing against West Ham and then playing against Liverpool. And certainly on what we saw today, Dubravka was Newcastle's best player. So yeah, guys, there you go. That's the 1 star for Dan Burn, the 2 stars for Martin Dubravka. I don't really feel the need to go any much beyond that. And that was a day where, as I wrote in my Mail Sport match report, the closer Newcastle get to Wembley, the more bad things happen. And a lot of bad things happened today. That wasn't good. It feels negative. It feels flat, and it leaves me really worried going down to Wembley. Let me know what you think. Please hit like, comment, subscribe. Everything else I ask for in terms of interaction, I love it. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you getting this far, because I imagine after that you don't much feel like reflecting on it. It wasn't a good day for Newcastle. It doesn't leave anyone in black and white, and I'm wearing black and white tonight, in a good place. So thank you so much again for watching. I'll see you again. When will I see it? It'll be back end of the week, won't it, when we're looking ahead to that game down at West Ham. Wow, that feels a long way off. Probably a lot to pick through before then in terms of getting these big injury updates on Hall, Isak, all the rest of it. To that end, look out for my news stories in Newcastle Confidential on Thursday. In the meantime, guys, thank you, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Good night.